Imagine being a national hero, the pride of millions, only to see your life unravel in the blink of an eye due to a single, tragic mistake on the world's biggest stage. Andrés Escobar, a man who had everything, a flourishing club career, a bright future, and the hopes of a nation resting on his shoulders, found his life shattered after an own goal in the 1994 World Cup. This one fateful moment would set off a chain of events that led to an untimely and brutal end to his life, just 5 days after Colombia's World Cup elimination. Today we dive deep into the untold story behind that devastating own goal, uncovering how it destroyed his career and tragically took his life. Stick around. This is a story of triumph, failure, and heartbreak that you won't soon forget. The rise of Colombian football and Escobar's journey. To understand the gravity of Andrés Escobar's tragic end, we must first look at how Colombian football reached the heights it did in the early 1990s. Colombia was coming out of a dark period, a time when the country's football scene was tainted by the influence of the powerful drug cartels. But by the 1990s, Colombia's national team was in the midst of a golden era. Under the guidance of coach Pacho Maturana, Colombia qualified for the 1994 World Cup with an undefeated record, topping their group in the South American qualifiers. The team's 5-0 demolition of Argentina in Buenos Aires was nothing short of historic, showcasing their talent and determination. The squad boasted several exceptional players, each of whom played an integral role in the team's success. Carlos Valderrama, with his iconic hair and exceptional playmaking ability, led the midfield. Adolfo Valencia, a powerful forward with an eye for goal, was a constant threat. And Faustino Asprilla, whose flair and skill were matched only by his unpredictability, was another star in the making. But it was Andrés Escobar, the quiet, composed defender from Atlético Nacional, who emerged as one of the cornerstones of the team's defense. Escobar wasn't just a reliable center back, he was a leader. His calm demeanor and fair play earned him the nickname, the gentleman of football. On the field, he was the epitome of professionalism, always putting the team first. He had already achieved great success with Atlético Nacional, having won the prestigious Copa Libertadores and multiple national titles. At the peak of his career, Escobar was poised for a big move to AC Milan after the World Cup, and he was set to marry his longtime fiancée, which made his future look even brighter. The dark side of Colombian football. The cartel influence. However, beneath the surface of Colombia's rise in football, there was a far darker reality. The sport was deeply entwined with the country's drug trade, a relationship that had begun in the 1980s and had continued to influence every aspect of Colombian society, including football. The Medellin cartel, led by the infamous Pablo Escobar, and the Cali cartel were deeply involved in the sport, laundering drug money through football clubs and using the game as a means of asserting power. These cartels not only controlled major clubs, but also exerted tremendous influence over the country's footballing culture. The presence of these criminal organizations cast a long shadow over Colombian football. The national team was not only representing the pride of the country, but also the dangerous reality of the violence and intimidation that surrounded them. The players were caught in a precarious position. On one hand, they were adored as national heroes, but on the other, they were vulnerable to threats and violence from those with power and money. Escobar, however, was a man of principle. He stood against the influence of the drug cartels and was determined to represent his country's pure footballing talent, free from the taint of corruption. In many ways, he became a symbol of hope for Colombia, embodying what the country could achieve if it moved beyond the shadow of its violent past. But by the time the 1994 World Cup arrived, the country was still in turmoil. Pablo Escobar's death in late 1993 had not brought peace to the nation. If anything, it had fueled more violence and power struggles between rival cartels. As the national football team prepared for the World Cup, they were not only battling for glory on the field, but also for survival in a nation gripped by fear. World Cup 1994. The pressure builds. The 1994 World Cup, hosted by the United States, was meant to be Colombia's crowning moment. The team was full of talent and promise, and many saw them as serious contenders. Some, including football legend Pelé, even predicted that Colombia would make it to the semifinals. But the pressure on the team was immense, both from their own country and from the violent environment they were operating in. From the outset, the tournament proved to be more challenging than expected. Colombia's first match was against Romania, and despite a valiant effort, they lost 3-1, with Romanian star Gheorghe Hagi putting on a masterclass performance. The loss was disappointing, but it was their second match against the United States that would define their fate. The stakes were incredibly high. A loss to the US would almost certainly eliminate them from the competition, and the players felt the weight of not just the game, but also the fear of violence and threats hanging over them. The atmosphere in the Colombian camp was tense. Faustino Asprilla, one of the team's star players, recalled calling his family before the match, telling them to stay hidden, fearing that violence might erupt if they lost. As the team prepared to take the field against the United States, coach Pacho Maturana received a chilling threat. If he included midfielder Gabriel Gomez in the starting lineup, both Gomez's family and Maturana's family would be killed. Gomez was forced to leave the team, and the mental strain on the players only grew. The fateful own goal, the match against the United States, turned out to be one of the most memorable and tragic moments in World Cup history. In the 35th minute, a mishit shot from John Harkes was played into the box, and Andrés Escobar, attempting to clear it, inadvertently sent the ball into his own net, giving the United States a 1-0 lead. The crowd erupted, and Escobar could only watch in disbelief as his mistake was recorded in the history books. For any player, an own goal is a moment of immense shame and disappointment. But for Escobar, however, was not alone in feeling the weight of this loss. The Colombian team, already under intense pressure, failed to recover from the blow, and by the second half, they were 2-0 down. Despite a late goal from Adolfo Valencia, the damage was done. Colombia was eliminated from the World Cup in the group stages. The tragic aftermath, Escobar's murder. Escobar returned to his hometown of Medellin, where his life would take a tragic turn. Just 5 days after Colombia's elimination from the World Cup, he went out to a local nightclub to relax with friends. What happened next is a painful reminder of the dark side of fame. After the night had wound down, Escobar became involved in an argument with 3 men in a car park. The altercation escalated, and as Escobar was getting into his car, the men opened fire, shooting him multiple times. Each shot was followed by a mocking shout of "Goal!", the cry of South American football commentators when a goal is scored. The irony was cruel, and the pain of the moment was undeniable. Escobar was rushed to the hospital, but despite efforts to save him, he succumbed to his injuries. He was just 27 years old. The motive behind his murder remains unclear. While some speculate that it was revenge for his own goal and the loss of money from gambling on the game, others believe that Escobar was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. A national tragedy, Escobar's death sent shockwaves through Colombia. The country had already endured so much, and this senseless killing seemed to be the final blow. His funeral was a somber event, with mourners paying tribute to a man who had represented hope, dignity, and integrity. The Colombian president, Cesar Gaviria, delivered a heartfelt eulogy, calling Escobar a loyal player, a model Colombian. His funeral procession was a painful reminder of how much the country had lost in such a short time. In the years that followed, Escobar's death became a symbol of the intersection between football, crime, and politics in Colombia. His tragic end serves as a stark reminder of the pressures that athletes, particularly in volatile regions, can face when they are caught in the crossfire of violence and corruption. Andrés Escobar's story is not just a tale of a footballing error. It's a story of resilience, integrity, and the tragic consequences of a single moment. His own goal in the 1994, Escobar was a man who stood against the corruption and violence that plagued his country. A man who dreamed of a future filled with football glory and personal happiness. That dream was tragically cut short. Thanks for watching. If this story has touched you as deeply as it has us, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more in-depth looks at the unforgettable moments in football history. We'll be back soon with more incredible stories. Stories that remind us of the power of sport, the fragility of life, and the resilience of the human spirit.